Whether you keep them in your home or love to see them in theirs, these are the creatures that bring us all together.
Reptiles. We're going to be delving into the experiences of reptile lovers from around the block and around the world. This is the Reptile Talk Podcast.
Boom! What is going on, everybody? This is Jeremy Turgeon from Brassman Reptiles.
And I'm Rob, and I'm keeping it real.
Hey, and this is the Hurricane Helene edition.
Bum, bum, bum.
Oh man, yeah, we're all bracing ourselves for the impending wet that's slowly creeping our way. None more than tonight's guest, though.
Yeah, geez, he's right in the thick of it right now.
Right there.
Luckily, like my area, I'm not supposed to get it until tomorrow morning, but it's
Yeah.
right about on Florida right now.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be fun. So, Rob, how are you doing pre-hurricane?
I'm staying dry at the moment, which is nice, but I have a feeling that tomorrow I'm not going to be so lucky.
Yeah, it might be the case. Same here.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a little band of weather that came through the mountains last night, and as I was driving home, like it was like torrentially raining, and I was like, hang on. We're a day and a half away from when this is supposed to be happening.
Yeah. Like, hold your horses now. Slow down.
Yeah, I don't like the foreshadowing that this is creating.
Yeah. Well, literally, I was watching the weather right before we hopped on, and literally, they were like, "Oh, there's a low pressure system that's on the western side of North Carolina, and because the weather, the air is traveling northeast, it's just like sucking the edge of the hurricane up right across the mountains, and severe flood warnings all along like western North Carolina."
Yeah. That's me.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they've already they already shut down one of the roads that goes to one of the local lakes, and I'm just like, that's cool.
That's good news. Of course that's good news.
Yeah. What could go wrong? And I chuckled because first floor of the apartment complex, whoever lives on that outer edge put like 4 sandbags just on the edge of the sidewalk, and I was like, good try.
I don't know if it's enough. Yeah, I don't know if that's enough.
Yeah, good try.
Oh
Man. Well, as always, tonight's episode is brought to you by Black Box Cages. Make sure you go check them out, blackboxcages.com. Check out their amazing racks and cages, because you should upgrade your stuff always. And Black Box is always upgrading their stuff and what they offer to us keepers. So go check them out. Tell them we sent you. And of course, if you use code Reptile Talk, you can save a little off your order. And who doesn't love saving money right now? My only other piece of business, and I touched on this the last 2 episodes, I am still fighting the Facebook chaos for the podcast. So I tried to set up these 2 episodes and again was denied by StreamYard, and then was immediately nailed on Facebook with this attempted cybersecurity breach thing that is only happening with our ads with our posts for the podcast. I don't understand why. I'm still trying to figure it out. So to those of you who are here on YouTube, thank you for being here. If you don't mind, share this, because we're only able to hit a fraction of the audience that we normally would. So please share this out. And again, if you're an audio only listener, thank you for your continued support. And this does not impact you whatsoever. It's just the people that want to stare at our smiling faces for an hour when we talk about reptiles, or potentially frowny faces and depressed looks, whatever. It's fine.
Existential dread.
Yeah, right. But I'm super excited. It's always a fun time when we have Steve Tillis on the podcast, the OG, the Reptile Talk OG. We've got so many different things to discuss with him. So let's get him in here, and hopefully his lights and power don't go out. Here we go. What's up, dude?
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah, we are waiting for the hurricane to hit us, so hopefully we'll squeeze in at the last minute and not have any issues. But if so, we will keep it rocking in the dark, hopefully.
There you go. Steve said he has a flashlight, which means it'll be campfire story time.
Yes, it'll be great. Yep. Yeah. So hopefully no existential dread or anything like that. We can cover other happy topics like, Nido virus and what
yes.
There's fun stuff too out there, but that's there's a bunch of stuff to talk about.
Those are the big things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, while we're immediately jumping into the happiest topic of the reptile land, you just recently published a new paper.
So we recently just published a paper describing nidovirus or serpentovirus in a group of viperid snakes, as well as a death adder, and so it was a bunch of arboreal pit viper species, and then a gaboon viper and a Tillis as well. So both African vipers, Asian vipers, and like I said, this one elapid. And we discovered basically 4 new species of virus inside of a new genus of serpentovirus. So really just massively expanding the host range and really just showing how much viral diversity there is out there. Like, the cool thing about this study is that, I don't know if it's cool, I guess, but so it was a bunch of collaborators with a bunch of different zoo institutions, because this whole collection was confiscated out of New York. And so it was actually featured on Animal Planet's TV show, The Zoo, where they actually show them collecting the snakes, making observations of a respiratory disease outbreak, getting samples in and discovering that it's serpentovirus. And then from there, we kind of take the describe the rest of the plot in our paper. But it's really cool to see, this stuff out in the real world. And, it really, again, does kind of show how much viral diversity there is out there. So again, these are not like the same viruses that we're seeing in ball pythons or any other pythons, but they are still pretty closely related. And what is interesting to me, and my biggest takeaway from working on the study, so I forget the genus, but it starts with a T, the beautiful pit viper, the insularis, the
not Tripolemus, Trimerosaurus.
Yes, yeah. So that was the genus of the arboreal pit vipers that we think was like the host reservoir for this virus. But even within that, we saw these very statistically significant patterns between which viruses the snake's species were carrying. So like the beautiful pit viper had a bunch of viral diversity, but only from one clade, whereas other species would have a very high prevalence, but only certain strains. So it's a very complex picture, but the data we put out is just super cool and super interesting. And again, it also just, at this point, we've now seen it in vipers, elapids, of course, pythons, boas, colubrids, turtles, skinks, chameleons. So, there's a lot of viral diversity out there, and it can all be pretty interesting stuff. But a lot of the studies we put out, they're all open access, and so you guys are welcome to read them. And this information is not behind a paywall. This information is like available to you guys. And so, one of the other studies I just put out a few months back was a big deep dive into the genomes of a bunch of different serpentoviruses or nidoviruses. And so again, there's a tremendous amount of diversity that almost mirrors reptile taxa in some ways. And so we're really just starting to appreciate the tip of the iceberg, but it also is like puts a lot of this stuff into a perspective in the sense of, these are what we are seeing in captivity are extensions of natural patterns that, are kind of baked into the cake of dealing with a live animal with a microbiome,
Yeah.
and sometimes
You
that
mean
that
they're
can
not sterile coffee mugs? What
they
the
are
heck?
not. No, no, it turns out that bubble boy snakes are maybe not the most robust, but we really don't know. Like that, there's a lot of understanding that like there's our best guesses based on the best available information, but that's not the same as knowing.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so it's I feel like people have these unrealistic expectations of what the level of knowledge is and the certainty in that knowledge versus like these are the patterns we see. Based on these patterns, here's our best guess at making, you know, keeping a colony free, keeping a colony, managing disease within that colony. What are the risks of various whatever, again, we're starting to get a pretty complex picture being painted, but it is still incredibly manageable. And if the expectation is managing it in terms of disease, then I think this is, a good. There are much scarier pathogens out there, and so I'm really grateful that nidovirus is our best attempt at building a boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's interesting because I think the focus for so long has been primarily on pythons, at least in the reptile hobby, that I feel like a lot of people miss that it's also in so many other things, and,
Yeah, well,
and they
so
get so sidetracked with that.
that hits the expectations problem. And so that is a kind of byproduct of the limitations of testing. And so a lot of the testing available to consumers is a little bit more restrictive on the types of viruses that it can pick up. And so for some species, that's probably good enough. But for other species, like green tree pythons are probably a really easy one to pick on because they have a really high viral diversity, which sidebar, I think it is interesting that small arboreal pythons and small arboreal pit vipers both have very high viral prevalence and very high viral diversity and have very high or very small home ranges. Like the home range of a green tree python is like
True. Yeah.
fractions of other python species. But all that aside, like if you're trying to screen a ball python or a green tree python for serpentivirus, like there might be a dozen or more viruses that you're really actually looking for. And
Yeah.
a lot of the tests may not be able to get that diversity. And so if you're testing a viper with these tests designed for kind of sometimes very specific python viruses, like you just might be missing stuff because the test is just not reactive enough to it. Whereas like the University of Florida, where I work at for their diagnostic lab, the technology we use is kind of fundamentally different in terms of the approach we take for screening for these. And it picks up a much wider diversity of viruses. But the flip side of that is that it's a more expensive test. But we genetically sequence the results, and so with that, we're my pitch for UF is that when you test through us, like you're potentially contributing to the forefront of science. Like, if it is a weird genome, we're going to pick that up. And that's a thread that we pull on, So it's
right.
It's, there are, testing is a tool and all tools have their limitations. And so different strategies are, have different pros and cons. And so it's not, it's a complex and kind of detailed story to try and paint for people, but like there's the expectation of like no virus, and then there's the expectation of no disease, and that no disease, like you can make a pretty good testing regimen, pretty good quarantine practice, and probably say very safe within not seeing a bunch of disease. And again, especially if you manage it appropriately, these are solvable problems, but yeah, it's. I really encourage anyone to go to like Google Scholar and just search my name, and all of the work we put out on serpentivirus or nidovirus is open access. And so again, it is like we have a lot of really good information that we're putting out there now, and it's the results of the people investing in the research is starting to come to fruition.
Which is awesome, because so often, I mean, as you very well know, like, reptiles do not get that kind of attention for very much when it comes to science or research. So it's cool to really start to see the fruits of that labor and those investments of people that are genuinely trying to figure things out and have some kind of more solid knowledge base of what is actually going on.
Yeah. Well, that's what's so cool, is that so much of my PhD research was funded by Carpet Fest donations and the industry. And so to be able to do science with that money, generate answers, and then deliver those answers to people in a way that is helpful is like, what you think science is like. It's really cool to be a part of a good story like that. And so, yeah.
Heck yeah. So from the time that you guys find a new strain of serpentovirus to the time that it's able to be picked up on a test at UF, like, what does that time frame look like as you find each new strain?
Yeah, so part of the initial diagnostic screening, if it is positive, involves a DNA test or an RNA sequence test for a virus. But that's delivered within, I think the turnaround time we have is under a week. So it's pretty.
Oh, wow.
The basic genetic sequencing for just a small amplicon like that is pretty quick and easy. It's then when we say, oh, this little bit of sequence we have is really weird. What does the whole rest of the virus look like? Because that's the other problem too, is that our diagnostic test is searching for 140 base pairs out of a 30,000 base pair genome. And so when I say it's 98% similar to ball python nidovirus, so it's probably ball python nidovirus, the assumption we are making is that portion of genome we're looking at represents the entire 30,000 bases of genome. And so when we get a really weird segment that is like only distantly related to anything, then we will go and sequence the whole genome and see, okay, what does the whole 30,000 bases look like? And that's a much more expensive thing to do and takes a lot longer to do. But that's how we really get down on the information in terms of seeing not only kind of the superficial diversity that's out there, but also just like some of these genomes are not organized similarly at all. Like, some parts of them are very similar and some parts of them are just mix and match kind of like crazy. And part of the mechanism for that, we think, is through viral recombination, where you have two viruses infecting the same cell and they can kind of swap genetic material. And the result is you have portions of this genome that don't share the same evolutionary history. And so it's like, it's hard to describe that pattern to people. We want a boxes to put things in and a line of evolution that goes from A to B to C to D. And it's really like, well, this part of the genome goes A to B to C to D, and this part of the genome goes D to C to A to B, and this part of the genome goes, is stolen from a fungus. Like, it's yeah. So it's there's a lot we don't know. Like, if anything, I consider my success in my research as defining how much we don't know, not necessarily filling in on what we do,
Yeah.
But we have a much better grasp of the solution now than we did certainly, even a few years ago, but like 10 years ago when this virus was first discovered, it was, the landscape was totally unknown. And now we really are kind of filling in a lot of that. But
yeah, and I think that's one of those things as people now will have access to some of this more elaborate information. I think it's important to note, like 10, 11, 12 years ago, nobody knew what the hell was going on.
Yeah. So 2014 is when the viruses were first described in ball pythons. And then, or actually that was an Indian python, and then ball python was put out around the same time. Then came green tree pythons, and then a couple of other studies. But yeah, it's been again, really kind of fun to be on the forefront of that and pushing that understanding and kind of getting to mix different parts of my life into a, more legitimate landscape inside of a university and stuff like that. It's been really cool.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, it makes me think of like when you can kind of see this happen when people get into reptiles. It's like they get in, they learn a little bit, and they're like, I know everything. And then the more that you learn, you're like, oh, actually, maybe I don't know.
Crap.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
right.
just keep snakes in a box, man. I don't know. There's so much that I don't know. But
yeah,
we are
we can
building that knowledge.
we can jump off of viruses. I think that's enough vegetables for people to choke down. But I have a special surprise for you guys. And so this seems incredibly fitting because these actually hatched out in our last hurricane. And so I gave them hurricane themed names. So this is tropical depression.
I love this.
This is a little baby Halmahera python. And so I was able to successfully produce a clutch of 4 of these this year. They're just beautiful little perfect babies. I don't know what else. You can fill in the whatever background people may or may not have for this species, but it feels truly a privilege to be able to hold this animal.
That is phenomenal. I'm so geeked.
Yeah. What blows my mind is just how like placid they are, like almost out of the egg. Like they're just like the goofy, shy nature of the adults like absolutely translates to the babies. They're just very very fun, very cute.
That is so awesome, man.
So freaking awesome.
And for people who are listening on the audio only, he's got a incredible baby Halmahera scrub or Halmahera python, Similia tracei, that he was able to produce some. Very few have been produced in the US and the world as of right now. So just like and that's the first species of scrubs that you bred is
mild flex.
Yeah,
mild flex.
I got a good first guess, I guess, but they're a very, very shy species of python. And, in addition to just, so I imported, I did not import them, but I got 4 imported animals. Have had them for, I think, 3 years now, have not lost any of them. They're just a very, very shy species of python, and the challenge is really to get them kind of acclimated and not just overly stressed. And so the first year they were an entirely enclosed box with just a little peephole to check on them in a bioactive cage, so I never really messed with them. Then I started keeping them kind of like a regular scrub python, and then ultimately this year when I tried to breed them, I just put them 2.2, so 2 pairs into like a 4 foot by 4 foot by 7 foot marijuana greenhouse, and they did great. So it's just blew my mind and blew any expectation I had to get success this early on. But this really was kind of the proof of concept for some of the stuff I do here. And so the building that the adults are in the biosecure python building, and so that has about half the world's python species, and it's really themed towards privatized conservation. So what would actual organized private conservation look like that would mirror a zoo type field? And so this species was really kind of if I could have success with them, it's a really good model for what this exactly, and this is a good model because the people that have bred them, I don't know of any that have actually been sold from the captive bred clutches. So as far as I'm aware, this is the 9th or maybe 10th clutch. I think there's been 2 or maybe 3 in Europe, and then the rest have been either in US zoos or US private keepers. And so, it just, the people who work with them and who've had success with them really care about the species and want to see them with people who will do success with them, So it's really cool. It really is. And, again, just the privilege of being able to hold one of these guys is. phenomenal.
That is so
Dude.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And like that, this is what they do. This is them. This is not a
Find a
baby like
comfy spot.
it does not remind me at all of the other baby scrub pythons that I had like establishing the animals in my colony.
Mhm.
Yeah. It doesn't remind me of the Barnecks at all. Like literally, those guys are always moving around, looking at something, eyeing you up, trying to figure out what's going on. Like that guy's
Yeah,
just like, oh, I found a little
just
spot. I'm just gonna hang out here.
and he was like that, like literally out of the egg. Like they were really fun to hatch. Like and yeah,
Mm.
so they hatched out. They pipped out in the middle of the last hurricane we had, and I actually lost power for most of a day, and so the incubator was like not at temperature and like
Yeah.
at this point it takes a lot to actually stress me out, and so like I wasn't really that worried about it, but it's still like it makes for a great story of like
Yeah.
checking the incubator with a little flashlight and seeing a little head picked out, and so
Dude, that is
Hell yeah,
incredible.
man. That's
I
just a
remember when you-
massive freaking achievement, dude.
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, and it was my first clutch of the year, first clutch of that building, first scrub python clutch. Like again, it was the animals just really hit a groove, and it clicked.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
And I
dude.
think it's interesting too that you had 2.2 in that in that tent, because like I could not do that with my scrubs. I know for a fact. Like my Barnack male is frightened of everything that has to do with
Interesting.
another male scrub. If I put him in a holding container that had a male in it before him, he freaks out. He muss all over the place. He like the second I open it up, he like jumps out and dives across the room. And if he
That's
smells
funny.
the shed or anything, he is not with it. Like he could not do that.
That's funny. Yeah, I have some ring pythons that are like that, where again, like the female really wanted to eat the male for the
Yeah.
first few years that I tried, and the male realized that female really wanted to eat him, and so now like I can't put him in to even try to breed. Like she's chilled out. I think they would be fine, but he's not going to ever give her the chance. He is so terrified of her. So it just
PTSD, man.
yeah. No, they what I really enjoy being able to keep the diversity of species I do in all of the different. So I have all these different buildings that are kind of different themes or different lenses to look at herpetoculture. And so I have this, biosecure python building. I have my own display exhibit building. That's like how I enjoy keeping stuff for me. And then I have, a commercial building that is like the blood pythons and short-tailed pythons and a few ball pythons and now some green tube pythons and stuff like that. But like keeping the diversity of animals that I do in the different lenses that I keep them in, like you really start to kind of figure out exactly how much of the lights are on, for some of these animals. Like,
Yes.
we're starting to understand that pythons, or at least a lot of pythons, aren't exactly social, but they are kind of sometimes parasocial. And, there's a lot of risk that can come with cohabbing stuff, but there's also a lot you can learn from the animals cohabbing stuff if done appropriately and responsibly. And again, it's like what a lot of the virus stuff has done is made me realize just how much of our knowledge is truly cemented in. And, if you give yourself permission to, I don't want to say experiment with your animals, but maybe that's an appropriate term for it. But, like, you don't want to like put the animal's health in jeopardy by any means. And so it helps to like have I've been doing this since 2009 was my first year hatching ball pythons. And so like at this point, like I know what a ball python looks like in a rack because I've been doing it for 15 years. And so now I can put a ball python not in a rack. And when it starts acting weird, I know what that looks like before it progresses into something. And so
Right.
I give myself that little bit of permission to say, okay, well, what is the range of behavior that we actually see in animals if we give them a full range of stimulus that, is not the commonly adhered to method of how you breed ball pythons, which is, a rack of whatever, and you just take the male and you put it into the next one. Like it just, the rules aren't necessarily as set in stone as people seem to think they are, and you can learn a lot when you step a little bit off the trail and see what insight comes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I did that a little bit this year with some of the baby shorttails that I produced. I set up the whole group of them in a sweater box size with like multiple different
Mhm.
hides and some crumpled paper and stuff. And then after a few weeks, I offered food, and a bunch of them, like about a little more than half the clutch, took food like right away before having been separated and set into their own in tubs and like
Yep.
all that stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna like those ones that are eating, I'm gonna leave them in this setup, and then the other ones that are being a little bit more picky, I'll see if they want a little bit more privacy. And those ones that are in that bigger setup, I'm feeling like they probably are going to do better if I sell them to people who are just trying to keep them as a pet, and they go into a 10-gallon or like most people are not putting them in a rack
Yep.
system
Yep.
if they're just getting one as a pet. And so I've been experimenting a little bit with that this year to see if those babies, when I send them off, they do better than some of the ones that I've raised in individual tubs. So.
Yeah, I could definitely believe it. Yeah, I mean, the more I am finding is that like the more stimulus you give your animals, the more they will use it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
sometimes you can provide more stimulus in a larger enclosure that has multiple animals in it. It's like but you also need to have, good plans and backup methods. Like that Halmahera cage has cages within it that I can close off. And so like if I need to separate everyone, I can. And, so there's a very thin line to walk between like the best practices are best practices for a reason,
Yeah.
but also it a best practice isn't the only practice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
True.
100%. And we'll never know until you push that envelope and see
Yeah.
what those possibilities are.
Yeah, really, like a lot of these animals are more robust than we give them credit for in a lot of ways, and sometimes like
Yeah.
more hands off is better for the animal, or just different. Sometimes I feel like the choices we make as keepers benefit keepers first and the
More than the
animals
animal. Yeah.
second.
Yeah. True.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it takes people innovating and testing and experimenting to figure out, oh, maybe this actually does work out better for the snake than we think it does. And it might be a little bit of extra work for the keeper, but it's also a viable way of doing things,
Yeah, and it's not even like better or worse, it's just different. Yeah.
Yeah. But good God, don't post about it on TikTok if it
But
goes
do
against
not
the
post
norm.
about it. Yep.
Yeah, not in a Facebook group at least.
Yeah. And again, like, it's good advice because it's good advice, and it scales. It's advice that scales, whereas like I could not describe how to safely cohab ball pythons in the sense of like knowing all the little nuances to look for that lead up to a problem versus like when you hit a problem in that kind of setup, it escalates far quicker. And so that there's pros and cons to everything,
True.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
I think my ball pythons in that setup live a better life than the ball pythons in my tubs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can see that.
And it's like, it's hard to explain that to somebody who doesn't have the experience that we have of having seen hundreds and hundreds of, snakes. It's like, you could be like, hey, look, it is okay to cohab them. Just know that if, XYZ goes wrong, it's probably going to go wrong really bad. And, you might explain 100 different scenarios to them, but there's also 300 other scenarios that could also potentially become an issue.
It is certainly adding chaos to the system, for sure. Yeah.
100%. 100%. So along with hatching cool things like Tracy Eye, What else is popping out of those eggs in the incubators over there? Because I know it's not just scrubs. As cool as that would be, it's not just scrubs.
Yeah, I'm having a pretty good season. Like it's like right in the right ways. I'm not being like killed on numbers. Most of the clutches that I have are good, solid clutches, and there's a good mix of like kind of experimental clutches and genetics that I'm playing out, and stuff that I've pretty well established at this point. So, yeah, I'm doing. So I just actually hired someone to help me out on the farm to give me free me up on more time in the lab and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But with that, I am posting more stuff available on Morph Market and all that kind of thing. So a lot of these projects are finally I've been tinkering with away on for years, and I'm finally starting to put them out there in a little bit more vocal of a way, and trying to get those animals out to people at this point. And so for a lot of very cool new Borneo projects, did good on Mocha Granite stuff this year. And so Mocha being the T positive albino, and Granite being, of course, the is that the original Borneo mutation, do you think?
I think it is, yeah.
I think
it is, yeah. And then that same trait crossed into ultra platinum stuff, and so a lot of very neat looking animals.
Heck yeah.
And then for bloods this year, I have a good mix of like slackline to tomato bomb batik stuff. It was a repeat pairing that I did of the Lily Batrix Het T positive bred to a Lily T positive Ivory, and that clutch just like blew me away a couple years back. And so repeating that pairing again, because again, there's also like I think like it's been too long since I've checked the map. There's like umpteen different snakes that I could produce by that pairing, and I didn't hit on all of them the first go around, and so I'm trying to repeat again to see if I can hit on T positive versions of that, or non T positive versions. Yeah,
absolutely.
And at this point, now that I know what those animals are turning into, it's like
okay,
I have a much better guess as what those babies are going to look like as well.
Right.
And then some more bomb line batik stuff, and your classic like nice blood python combo type things. But for the experimental clutches, I have it just hatched out. It was the Darth Vader male that I bred to a magpie. And so I didn't want to have any guesses as far as what the genetics were on there. I wanted everything to be like, and so I think the Darth Vader, if it is a Mendelian trait, which with blood pythons and short-tailed pythons is not a guarantee.
Right.
But if it is, it seems like it's like, one of those with like a subtle het, or, incomplete dominant, with the homozygous really being what you'd want. Like kind of like the flowerback stuff, where it's like, I don't really buy the het part of it. Like I think it should just be, some things are incomplete dominant marketed as recessive, and some things are recessive marketed as incomplete dominant. And really, when you look at it, all of these are boxes that we're creating that stuff isn't obligated to fit into anyway. And so it's whatever. So I think these are GoldenEye that are heterozygous for a more extreme form of the Darth Vader, which is like a really crazy looking, dark, really kind of faded pattern, like has this weird rusty color. They're just a really weird looking blood python. There was two of them that came in on the same shipment that were pretty obviously siblings. And I bred them to a tomato bomb batik. Oh no, that was a different pair. I bred them to a T positive and produced a lot of really beautiful animals.
Hell yeah.
But those are now a few years old, and so I decided I would give him a shot of breeding him to some GoldenEye stuff, because GoldenEye is kind of a very suggestible trait in blood pythons.
Yeah.
And so if it is a visual het type scenario, then the hypothesis would be that it would alter the GoldenEye in some way. And looking at all of the animals in those clutches, I would say that like they're weird looking GoldenEyes. Like they have a lot of really pixelated speckling on the back of their necks. They have a lot of you know how like a lot of the GoldenEye combos get those like patternless backs, but then black stripes along the side. Like a lot of the 007s look like that. The Phantom, I think it was the Het Leucistic or whatever. GoldenEye combo did the same thing to it, and this looks very the same, except for just black, inky, connected, streaky sides, patternless back, neck speckles. So like weird looking GoldenEyes, where I'm like satisfied to think, oh, okay, I think there's going to be something worth pursuing here. And then I had another experimental project that I've been working for a while now, which is like I thought it was like an axanthic or an anery. You know, as a imported hatchling, it came in and was like looked like an axanthic ball python, like gray. Ooh, we're getting a little flat. Yeah, so far so good. It looked like axanthic ball python, but blood python, and so really hopeful that was going to end up proving out as like a simple recessive type thing, but then bred a het back to her this year, and so was crossing my fingers for like half the clutch being gray axanthic looking ball python-y things and half the clutch being like normal. But all of the clutch looks the same, which is to say not axanthic gray, but also like beautiful inky dark gray. Like it's definitely genetic in terms of like a line bred trait, and so I'm not like it's not the end of the line for the project. Like I'm truly excited about the animals that have hatched out, but it's obviously just a different direction to take that project in than something that was simple recessive versus a line bred thing. But that being said, like some of the animals I produce from it, they're not red. They're like this beautiful chocolatey brown, high contrast. Like it's basically like we are really good at making really red blood pythons. And I kind of want to see what we can do going 90 degrees the opposite direction. And I've been truly blown away by how some of these animals have colored up. Like they're beautiful. They really are.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
And that's the one that has, it looks like you took like ash or soot and like smudged all along the edges of the pattern too. So it's got like this like blurred look to it that I think you could do a lot with.
They're beautiful snakes. They really are. And like I said, the babies from this clutch are like, if I showed them to you, you'd be like, oh, I kind of want that. Like they're very pretty blood pythons. They're really cool. Like, there's, I don't know. There's a lot of what I think is the main engine behind, all of this reptile breeding and all that kind of stuff is like, we really like to seek out novelty. And so like, can we make a red snake brown? Can we make a brown snake red? Like it's almost like there's no inherent direction that's better or worse to take something in. It's all just like, can we see something new in a new way? And so I think a lot of the industry in some ways kind of feels a little stale for some people right now. And for me, what I think back on in terms of what I get out of it, like what's exciting to me is seeing a species in a way, either seeing, something that is hard to see, or, seeing something that is common to see in a way that it has never been seen before. And like, you've seen a Borneo, but you've never seen a Borneo amelanistic at a trade show, like it and so it's not, it's easy to follow the trend and say like, like I'll pick on blood pythons because again, it's so much of blood pythons has been as much red as possible. And, for me, I get enjoyment out of seeing really red snakes, but I get enjoyment out of seeing really beautiful animals and the novelty of that. And so, like, you know, a lot of these, I get a lot of joy from taking certain projects in different directions. You know, it's what can you do with a blood python that isn't red? That's a whole
different.
door. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's
that's-
like
I mean-
there's not really a lot of people doing that either. It's like
Yeah.
people are just breeding for red and yellow, which like,
Yeah.
hey, red and yellow
Yeah,
is fucking killer. But
yeah,
also
it's really unfair to like talk in any way, shape, or form badly about that, because they are
Yeah.
incredible animals, justifiably so. Whereas, like, you know, I'm sure I'm going to get animals in this clutch that blow my mind, and I'm sure I'm going to get animals in this clutch that are going to be like,
Right.
It makes me think of jungle carpet pythons, because for so long people have just been trying to make really yellow jungle carpet pythons, but there's somebody in Australia who's breeding for more black on the jungle carpets, and the things are freaking amazing. They're so cool looking, and you don't think like, you know, people are just like, I just want like really, really bright yellows, make more yellow, and I'm like, yeah, but have you seen the ones that are more black? Because they look like, I find them more striking than the more yellow jungles. I don't know.
But see, what's funny is like, is again, like, this is an unfair wager for me to place, and kind of throwing you under the bus a little bit. But like, if all the jungles we had here were dark face, if that's what we decided was cool, and then you're like, man, these are these yellow and black snakes in Australia, and they are just crazy. You would not believe what they can do with a jungle carpet. And like, you know, it's just,
but
what is the true magnet of our enjoyment in this? And, you know, grow that part of it for you. But jungle carpets are a great example, in the sense of like, even a cheap, like, it's hard to find an ugly jungle now.
Nowadays.
Like they are all really, really beautiful. Like, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago, even a little bit. Like, exceptional animals had names because they were exceptional. And now, like, every animal is exceptional. And it's like, you know, and we're like that in many ways with many lines of blood pythons. And it's like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
But that is, you know, not all there is to keeping blood pythons, or at least not all that there could be, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It's cool to see like how far we've been able to take those projects. But
absolutely.
We've kind of left a few other pathways untapped, which provide some cool opportunities, but is also just like, okay, well, how far are we going to take that before we realize, now we've got to go back to the inception once again and take the other direction.
Yeah. Well, again, and that's the beauty of it, is that, like, you know, it's kind of forever recursive. Like, that is where the story of these animals really does change to a plot of, like, kind of domestication, where it, like, you know, it at a certain point, the animals become reflections of us, not anything related to their wild counterparts, at least in many forms, you know.
Right.
I really wanted that to be a topic on Reptile Fight Club, of like, how long do we breed stuff in captivity before it's no longer the species that we we're taking from the wild? You know, how many generations?
We're talking about you, fat bearded dragons.
Well, the more like immediate way to have that conversation is to talk about pathogens. Like, it's why we really struggle to do captive breeding and release of a lot of species, is because, like, the microbiomes of our captive animals don't match the microbiomes of their wild counterparts, and negligent reintroduction can actually cause a lot of disease problems, because the pathogens move at a faster pace than the animals themselves do. And so, like, the same patterns occur in terms of the actual animals themselves. It's just, you know, 8 generations in a virus is like 8 days, and 8 generations in this is like, you know, 40 years. So it like, you know, so it really is a tough conversation to have, because like genetically this might still be the same animal, but epigenetically this one's offspring are probably going to eat mice way better than some of its siblings do.
Right.
And you pass that along, and at a certain point it's like, well, what these are mirrors to the conditions we place them in. And so that's, again, kind of all ties back to experimenting with keeping styles, and experimenting with, examining what it is that interests you about what it is you're actually doing. Because, if you're chasing $1 in this, good luck, first of all.
Yeah.
But, second of all, it's like, eventually that kind of gets a little old, and like, at a root of it, like, there usually is some sort of factor. And, it's no secret that a lot of reptile people are neurodivergent. And like, again, like, you read a lot of the draw for like ADHD or ADD and stuff like that, of novelty seeking behavior. And a lot of what we do is that it certainly scratches that itch, at least for me, and it provides me seasonality to base my year around. Like, I have distinct times of the year when I have breeding season, and distinct times of the year where I have hatching season, and distinct times of the so it is fascinating to me that reptiles can act as a draw and draw many of the same personality types in, and a lot of the people get kind of the same benefits from it. And so, that's where, why do you keep, what's the point of all this? Because it's not mutant snakes. Like, we're not just mutating snakes at infinitum for what? Like, these animals have no inherent value at all, like no intrinsic value. There's nothing that made a $20,000 banana ball python worth $20,000 back when it was worth that, versus any other normal. And so what was it that actually made that animal $20,000? Was it because this animal is worth $20,000? Is it because I value the experience of hatching out more of them, or remixes of that same mutation? Like, what do I value that at? I value that at $20,000. And so that's where I would, like, it is that making sense? Is that
yes,
yeah,
100%. And now it's valued at $100. So
and now it's valued at $100. But again, it's not. Now it's like, what is that? What is the function of that animal doing?
That.
And the function of that animal is now a pet animal. And so now that's a foot in the door. But the user of that animal is not getting the same experience out of it that a breeder would. And so the valuation on it is different. And so, like, it I guess I don't know what my conclusion is for this, other than just like, try to really lean into what makes keeping the animals fun and what makes it sustainable long term. Because, like, you guys know, this industry just burns through people. And especially when the economic times are not super supportive of an aggressively expanding industry in the way that it has been in the past few years, like, it's really important for people, if they want to stay in it, to realize why they want to stay in it, and set the expectations for those parts, so you don't get burned out on the parts that might have shitty days, They still poop whether or not they sell, so you gotta
still gotta eat.
Find a why to get in there and clean it,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest question. I think there's a lot of people that are finding themselves asking those questions more, as far, what species do I like to keep, especially like those folks who have more diverse collections that were maybe trying to build up a business in that way, or even those that focused on ball pythons because they're ridiculous, but they're finding out those things where, okay, maybe instead of focusing on a certain species, they're like, okay, well, they're focusing on that gene, like, I really like axanthic, or I really like pie, or I really like clown, and like, that's what I'm going to zero in on, so that exactly that they have that reason to go down and work with those animals because they like it again. I will tell folks, time and time again when they're thinking about like, oh, well, I want to get into this and I want to be a breeder or I want to do this. And I'm like, if you don't have a fundamental enjoyment working with the animals, you will get run out of this town so fast by your own animals, not by other breeders, but by your own animals, because you're just going to be so burnt out when you've got to open that enclosure to see that pastel heck clown ball python that you can't sell because 150 other people have them, and you're going to be very frustrated about that animal and by that animal. And when you have 30 of them, because that's just how many you made that year, you're going to feel miserable. So you might as well take the time and the investment to focus on exactly what it is you enjoy, so that it doesn't matter what genetic byproduct you may produce in your pairings, you're still going to love every single moment of it because it's something that you enjoy.
Yeah. And that's definitely why I picked the blood pythons and the short tail pythons as my focus, because they're like a much more fun species to work with. They're a much more dynamic species to work with. Like if you treat them poorly, they'll be mad at you for it for a while. And so like you actually have to like build a relationship with them and understand them and think about, okay, what's going to stress this animal out? What's going to like make it happy with me? What are the rules of our engagement so that I can keep from lighting your fuse and you keep from getting triggered, and we can just have a happy time together. And then the more happy times you have together, the longer that fuse grows. And you like, again, they're reflections of what you put into them, versus like, a ball python is a reflection of a rock at a certain level, like it and so like, there's joy to that. I have ball pythons and I love them and all of that. But like in terms of like what fuels me, it's the relationship with the animals, and in terms of like what species I can scale out and say, this is enough species I have enough fun with working with just on a base level that it's worth it for me to keep them.
Right.
For me, the blood and short tail pythons are a really good species for that. Like they're always a fun time, even if it takes some amounts, more work for some animals than others.
Yeah, absolutely. There's certainly always that one problem child in bloods and short tails.
Yes, yeah, there is. Yeah, a better way to say that would be that like blood and short tail pythons have a wider personality range, and because of that, they're a more fun snake to work with. Like I can have a rack of 10 of the same thing and have 10 different experiences cleaning that rack, versus like if I have a rack of 10 pied ball pythons, I know what cleaning that is. Yeah, like just so I don't know. It's yeah, but by the same point, like those species for that same reason isn't always like that's an intermediate snake. Like that is not a good first pet snake, because you're going to be scared of it starting out, and it's going to reflect that right back at you, and it's just going to feed back into a cycle where you're scared of the animal, and it's mean, and it's like, oh, it's not mean,
it's not really
just,
true. Yeah,
you guys don't understand the rules of engagement and haven't figured it out. Like it's really funny to me, all of my blood pythons are fantastic unless I am doing tours. If I take them to the front of the building for a tour and put them under lights and I'm standing over them and I'm talking about them and my hands are moving and it's just they lose it. They hate it. And so it's like, I promise guys, this animal is nice. It's just because I'm showing it to you that it's being mean. But
literally that exact same thing happened when Brian Barczyk came to film at Nerd. He was like, "Oh, you got bloods and short tails. Let me." And I was like, "Yeah, I got some that are great. All mine are awesome." I go in, I pick them up. The second he starts filming, they're like flipping and
losing they're like mind. Vibe is different, and I don't know what's going on, and so that triggers that fuse. And once that fuse is burning for the blood and short tail python species, I mean, like they will like stuck shed's a great example. Like I won't really address stuck shed in terms of like grabbing them and trying to like get it off them. Like I'll just wet the cage and hope it comes off. And like if it doesn't, I'll pay extra attention in the next shed cycle. And if it's a problem, then we can like do a hard grab on the animal and like, mess with it and stuff like that. But if I do that I have broken the trust of that animal, and it's going to take a while for me to like build it back. And so like, it's about providing the conditions for the animals to be happy so that you can keep your
That
engagement with them within the terms that they want to keep it in. They will rather break their neck than have you grab them behind the head. And so like
Yeah.
to them, that is like, if that is that traumatizing for that animal, it's gonna remember it, and it takes a while to gain that trust back. Like, that's personification at a certain level, but it's also kind of what I'm getting to is that like some of it's valid. I don't know. The lights are on.
I think that also probably has to do with people talk about this in humans, but I bet you that this comes down to with them generational trauma too. Because if you watch the videos from the skinning trade, that's how they grab them. They grab them right behind the head. They take them, they hit them with a thing, fill them up with air, and it's like there had to have been some that lived through that and were able to escape, and then that generational trauma was passed down because there's, if you grab a retic behind the head, they'll probably be like, don't fucking do that. But like when a blood or short tail, if you grab them behind the head, they have a very like strong response compared to most other snakes from my experience.
Yeah, it's like nothing else. It really is. And I mean it's so much weight being thrown around in such a small space that like the animals can genuinely hurt themselves. Yes, and so it's like, is a little bit of retained shed more of a risk than putting that animal in jeopardy and breaking its trust and stuff like that? It's like, no, I'm just gonna keep a closer eye on it and provide it the conditions it needs for a more success the next go around, and not but that also comes with like, I know how much neglect it would take to get a blood python to have enough like retained shed to be a medical problem, like it
right.
It's not like I can say like, oh, you don't have to worry about stuck shed with blood pythons. Like, it's there's a lot of nuance here, and so much of it just gets lost that
I've had a couple where they get that little bit of stuck shed, and I'll just set them in a bin with like 4 or 5 inches of water, and I just leave them in there for like 48 hours, and then when they come out, I put them right back into the enclosure, and just them moving around gets all the rest of the shit off.
It gets it up. Yep. Yeah, it really, I actually really don't think I've ever had a like actual stuck shed problem on a blood python, but again, it's like, I know there were times in my keeping career when I was like, stuck shed bad. If I see any stuck shed, I need to get it off that animal. And it's like, well, maybe moderate that a little, keep it in perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I think all of us at some point have come across a snake in the wild that's got a little bit of stuck shed attached to it. It's clearly not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah, it's definitely one of those things that like, I think part of it too is going back to when you hear this one file of information, people talk, oh well, it's stuck shed, your husbandry parameters are wrong, but now you need to go mitigate that situation right now. Otherwise the animal is doomed to skin infections and blah 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 and whatever other possibility. And it's like, no, it's not that bad. Here's an idea: take the hose on shower and just spray the thing.
Yeah, well,
and it's gonna be okay.
So much of the problem comes from the fact that like reptiles live on reptile timelines, and problems happen when we try and project our human timelines onto them. Like it
right.
Like with the Homa hair pythons, like I was hands off for a year. Like that's very, very hard to do.
Yeah.
Like, but and that also is like at month 2 when the thing hasn't eaten yet. Do you assist feed it? Is that regressing all of the 2 months of settling it's done so far, and now it's finally like right at the cusp of like, oh, it's relaxed enough where it'll consider taking a meal? And so like, what is that point of intervention, And so a lot of times people put that point of intervention on a human timeline when it doesn't need to be,
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, but it's so hard for people to get out of that because like even people who have had pets before, it's usually a cat or a dog, and they're thinking on like oh, I feed it every single day. I have a schedule.
Yeah.
When I get up in the morning, I feed my cat, I feed my dog, blah 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 blah. You know, they've got this regular regimented schedule, and they're like, oh, I have another pet. It's a snake. Same thing. It needs to be on a regimented schedule. I had people who would call the pet shop on like their feeding day is Wednesday, and they would
Yeah.
call like when we're closing on Wednesday, and they're like, I wasn't able to come in today. Like I'm stressed out. My snake is gonna freak out. And I was like, trust me, it will be fine.
It's gonna be
You
okay.
can come in tomorrow or the next day or the next day, or just wait till next Wednesday and then come in, because if you're feeding it every Wednesday, you're probably feeding
Yeah.
it too much.
Hold on.
Uh oh.
I
The
finally
power.
lost power. Hold on. Okay, I had a flashlight somewhere. There we go. You guys still hear me?
Time for story
we-
time.
All right, there we go. Now we're officially in hurricane.
I was just say the hurricane was like,
Mode.
okay, it's time to end the podcast. It's been
the hurricane
Yeah,
made the statement.
get about there. That was
That's
that's
great.
perfect. Well, I'm actually glad that the internet still held up and all of that too. So that
that's pretty
Yeah, we
wild.
That went
even
smoothly.
surpassed our hour mark, so it's Taylor says Reptile Talk after dark. That's Oh,
We already
man.
talked
That's
about
really funny.
Nido virus, damn it.
Yeah, right.
right, it's coming for you.
Ooh, Nido virus.
And Steve just pulls up the new published paper, and it's like, you have no idea.
It's not just green tree pythons anymore.
right.
Yep.
Oh,
No,
man.
it's a diverse world out there on all fronts, and
Yeah.
I enjoy being a part of either contributing to that understanding of that diversity or pushing it forward in the right ways.
Yeah.
I just think about the
Absolutely, man.
people who are selling baby green tree pythons, or like green tree pythons in general, that are like Nido clean, tested. And I'm like, oh,
But like,
Yeah.
it's like,
For now.
if it is that accurate? No. Is that good enough? Probably. So like,
Probably.
it's a it's a nuanced world that we live in, and so and I don't know. Manage your expectations. If you expect perfection, prepare to get your butt kicked.
Yep.
Enjoy the nuance, enjoy the diversity, and understand that there's a lot of lack of understanding in that diversity. And so,
Yes.
be fucking nice to people. Is that really that hard in this industry? It is. Like, I don't get it, but
It
Judging
is
by how the
genuinely
last
very hard.
50 years have gone,
yeah,
it is
Yeah.
really hard for people.
yeah.
That's that's the quote, guys. That's how we should end the podcast. Just be fucking nice to people. Damn it.
Basically.
Oh,
Well,
man.
we always have the one question that we're gonna wrap the pod with, and we'll ask
Yes.
you, and then we'll get your socials for people to follow you. But what is the thing in the reptile world right now, whether it be something that you're doing that you've done, how many arrows, or something that you've seen online that's got you excited about reptiles right now?
Oh no, it's definitely the Homoharas. I mean, that's like
Yeah, it's
that's,
gotta be.
you
Come on
cannot
now. Come
cannot
on.
get more peak Python breeder than that right now. Like, I just
Hell yeah.
and it wasn't in my expectations for this year. Like, it was truly a shot in the dark, truly a surprise. Like, I didn't even know the female was gravid at first. I thought it was dying, and only then, like 2 weeks after I pulled it off of the main cage, was like, oh damn, you're actually
Oh.
gravid. And so, it was a perfect in just so many ways that it, like, you guys know how hard it is to get that good of a high
Yes.
doing this, and so when you get it, you just mainline it and you ride it, and just it's so sweet. It was a lot of work, and to get results from it is incredible. So
Hell
that's
yeah,
that is fueling me right now. Yeah.
Dude.
Hell yeah,
Hell
bro.
yeah. Cannot beat it. Top experience, like leveled up
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah,
That is
it was
phenomenal.
so hard to, like, not check the incubator, not look at the animals, like, just not like it. They were really a practice in absence, not a practice in anything on my part. The trick is being as hands off as I could.
Yep.
Right.
And that's tough because with a lot of these rarer python species, when people get them, they're like, I want to post it. I want to do all this. Yeah.
I need it to intervene. It's not doing what I want it to do. And so I want to fix that. And, it's an animal on an animal timeline. And so, let it fix itself and you just give it the space to find it. I don't know.
To do that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Hell yeah,
Hell
man.
yeah, dude.
If people want to look up the things that you're doing on social media or otherwise, where should they look you up?
Yes. So I have a bunch of different stuff to plug. So we have Instagram and Facebook. I have a couple of different organizations between Reptillis, which is selling a lot of the commercial animals, to Archer Reptile Center, which is our public open for tours. Reptillis.org is my main centralized website. And so I'm trying to create a repository for serpentovirus, nidovirus information there. And so I'm trying to do some of, redo some of my studies in more of like more common knowledge. Like so it doesn't sound like scientific jargon, and so people can actually understand it a little bit easier. So reptillis.org is my main website. And from there, it radiates out to Archer Reptile Center for tours or Reptillis for commercially available products. I have YouTube at this point that you can see a lot of the facility on there, but Instagram is probably going to be the best way to follow us, probably the Reptillis page. And then Morph Market is starting to put more animals out there available and be more active in that. So check out the projects. Like I said, I feel genuinely lucky to work with such incredible animals here that really oftentimes don't exist anywhere else. Like you guys have seen it. And so, I put in a lot of work and I've not had the time to share that with others. And so I'm trying to be better about that, but I have been trying to be better about that for a while now. And I have a lot of things to juggle, but like I said, I'm trying to streamline my operations here and getting, more people to help me out and cover a little bit more ground because there's a lot of cool stuff that I'm doing here and I really want to share it with people. And it's hard to both do and talk about doing at the same time. And so, right now I need to do, and that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Dude, have you seen the thing where ChatGPT, the newest iteration, will take scientific papers and documents and stuff, and it will make a podcast where they like talk about it in like regular terms?
Oh, terrifying. I literally got to wonder
terrifying.
Like it just I like think about how much I choke through the nuance of talking about these viruses and just like imagining the confidence at which an AI would like make bold assertions about like it's a complicated world. Yeah.
I saw it recently, like yesterday, and I was like, this is weird, scary, and also very interesting.
Yeah. Well, especially because so much of science is like putting things in a way that's like, we think, we might, we kind of think, we kind of like, you can't like certainty is, even when you are pretty sure about stuff, you're like, we observed a statistical significance between these two variables and think they might be related because of such underlying patterns that we see in this other, like,
insert chat GPT.
Yeah.
It's definitely this.
It's definitely this. And so that's, but I don't know. It's really easy to not have fun doing a lot of aspects of this, and so I encourage people to really look at what makes it fun and grow that part of it.
Dude, hell yeah, man. That's what it's all about. Thank you so much for coming on tonight, man. As always. Man. Love the conversation. I love always hearing your perspective on things and getting to know a little bit more about what's going on in the serpentovirus world.
Yeah, I enjoyed being on, and again, I really like talking about this stuff and sharing it with people. And it's my passion was not viruses. Viruses found me, and there's a lot of people who are scared out there right now, and so I try and do the best I can to put out the best information that is available for us.
Hell yeah,
dude. Well, listen, man, stay safe during this hurricane.
For real.
Like,
yes, thank you very much. I will. Yeah, it'll be we will see how long we go without power, but I at least have a generator, so It'll be fun.
Yeah. Sheesh. Sheesh.
Be safe, man. We love you.
All right, take care.
Take
All
care.
right, man.